ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामिन इति नामिने। नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवम श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम। ओम तत्सत। हरे कृष्णा। So welcome back to all the devotees who like the bees that roam around the lotus attracted by the fragrance. The lotus here is the Srimad Bhagavat, which is giving a very beautiful fragrance, and there is a beautiful nectar inside this lotus. And when the lotus opens, all the bees are attracted. This is one of the symptoms of those who are actually devotees of the Lord. The great souls often compare by contrasting two insects which show very diverse characteristics. Excuse me. The two insects are the bee and the fly. So let's say there's a very beautiful park, and in that park, there's this beautiful pond with a lot of beautiful lotus flowers. So the bee, who's roaming all around the park looking for nectar, looking for honey, will neglect everything else and go straight to the lotus flower, being attracted by the beautiful fragrance. So you can be sure that if you see some insects hovering around the lotus flower, that they are bees. You don't have to wonder whether they are bees or they are flies. Why? Because the flies do not hover around the lotus flower. Even if the whole garden is full of lotus and there is one small area where there is a patch of dirt, something decaying and smelling, you can be sure that the flies are gathered around that area. They are not gathered around the lotus. That is why living entities who have evolved to the level that they are attracted by the transcendental fragrance of the Guna, Rupa, Leela, Nama of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are compared to the bees, the devotees, the satas. And those who are still oblivious or asleep to this higher taste and still attached to enjoying the dirt, the refuse, the decaying substances of this material world, who oblivious of the existence of the lotus, oblivious of the existence of the nectar, or rather actually they, even if they are told, they say, no, 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 we are not interested. That is not a very tasty thing. This decaying thing is very tasty. They have attraction for that. That is how perverse the nature of the living entity becomes. That they find things which are actually the source of misery and suffering as attractive. And that is the illusion. That is what is called as Maya. The scriptures give the example of the camel. The camel is one animal who is in the desert. And as he is roaming in the desert, there isn't much of vegetation. Often, whatever little vegetation he gets, that vegetation is mainly thorny shrubs. Because that's what grows in the desert. It's not that you'll have succulent, fresh vegetables growing in the desert. No, usually thorny shrubs. No mango trees, chiku trees, banana plantain trees. You can't expect that. Maybe if there's an oasis within the desert, possibly yes, but otherwise no. Otherwise it's just thorny shrubs. And the camel, he is excited to eat the thorny shrubs. And as he is chewing and biting, have you seen a camel eat? Very interesting the way he eats. His jaws side to side. He's chewing and crushing. And the scriptures say, this is not my example, this is given the scriptures. The Ushtra's example is, Ushtra means camel. As he is chewing on the thorny shrubs, the camel thinks, oh, these thorny shrubs taste so nice. What a beautiful taste. But I wonder why all these different shrubs taste the same. They taste quite good. The foolish camel doesn't know that what he's tasting is not the taste of the shrubs. What is actually happening is, because he's eating the thorny shrubs, the thorns are actually cutting his tongue, and his tongue is bleeding. And as he's chewing the thorny shrubs, the blood which is coming out from the wounds on his tongue is mixing with the thorns and the shrubs. And that is what he's tasting. He's actually tasting his own blood. But he is so foolish that he doesn't understand. He's thinking his own suffering as a source of enjoyment. So all these beautiful examples, again, last time we discussed about the ass, the donkey. So these all are mentalities, the mentality of the fly, the mentality of the donkey, the mentality of the camel. Khara Ushtra. Khara means donkey. There's a verse in the Bhagavad which mentions all these examples. So obviously all of you, there are 28 families connected here around, at least I would say in many of the families there are more than 2 or 3. So I would think around 60 odd devotees at least connected for this Bhagavatam class. Very consistently, dot 9 o'clock, maximum 2 minutes plus minus, all of you are coming. The last class, Gangotri Mataji somehow accidentally missed and she was feeling so sad. She separately wrote a message to me. These are all honeybees who like the nectar. So first thing is I would like to congratulate you that you have switched club from the donkey and the camel and the fly to the honeybee. So that is where we want to be. We want to be in that club, in that zone. So, so that is the good news. The good news is that we are in the right club. Now the important thing is we have to remain here. We have to remain not just around the lotus, but we have to go deep into the lotus and actually get the nectar. And that is why we have to continue our journey in the association of devotees and with the right consciousness engage in the process of hearing and chanting. And in that way, the nectar in the lotus flower of the Srimad Bhagavat will be revealed. And then that will give us actually true satisfaction. And the scriptures say that once a person actually, once the living entity actually tastes this nectar, it is so great, it is so sweet, it is so deeply satisfying to the soul that after tasting this, he will not even for a moment consider, oh, why did I leave that garbage and come here? Those who have not tasted but are somewhere around, sometimes they get a thought in the mind, oh, maybe the garbage is better. Why am I working so hard for this nectar? Maybe there's no nectar. But those who are actually tasting, they are intoxicated by the taste. The bumblebees are intoxicated by drinking the nectar. And they are saying, oh, this is so good. This is so wonderful. So that is what we are hankering for. That after tasting which all other tastes, material tastes of this material world will actually appear small and insignificant. That is the process ultimately of successful detachment by the development of a higher taste. Raso varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. And that is this whole endeavor of the Bhagavad. And that is what even Shukadev Goswami is trying to do. He's trying to develop detachment from all the things of this world and take exclusive shelter of the Lord simply by attentively hearing and discussing Hari Katha in the association of a pure devotee like Shukadev Goswami. And that is what the sages of Naimesharanya are trying to do. Headed by Suta Goswami, they are asking the Saunak and the other sages, they are asking Suta Goswami, please tell us. We were trying all these various processes of self-realization, but we were not actually able to achieve the desired result. You were there in that assembly where the topmost of all conversations in the universe happened. So please reveal to us what all has happened. So the conversation is continuing, and let us hang around the lotus and hopefully we can get some few drops of nectar, and that will keep us to continuously come back to taste this nectar more and more and more. The lotus feet of the Lord in the form of the Bhagavat is also intoxicating in a positive way. Material intoxication is addictive, and it degrades the body, the mind, and the soul. But spiritual intoxication elevates and positively energizes the body, mind, and the soul. It's an intoxication. Why it's an intoxication? The word intoxication is mentioned with respect to spiritual taste and experience because it creates a kind of a feeling of a feeling of high. Okay, I actually never really was into drinking, so I cannot fully fathom this. But apparently, those people who drink, they experience some feeling of high, and that is why they want to drink. There's some sense of a temporary, illusory sense of feeling above and light. But of course, it's illusory, and that is why it is followed by what we call as hangover. So all these material contrivances are actually just temporary, and they result actually in subsequent misery. Prabhupada would often say, I will tell you the technique of how you can go high and you can remain high forever. That is what we want to become. Not that Saturday night. Okay, today is now 9:15 Saturday night. We are not far from Bangsar, so a lot of people will be either in Bukit Bintang or in Bangsar. They will be drinking another kind of nectar. But we can be sure that early morning tomorrow, when the illusory highness has come down, it will throw the very same individuals on the other side of the wave, from the heights to the lowness. That is the nature of the material world. So we want to attain a state of highness where we can actually continue to remain high. And that state is not possible in a material environment. That state is possible only when we connect to our deeper inner selves. Because our essential nature is a part and parcel of God. So when we understand and connect with that real nature, when we act on the platform of that understanding, we can tap into that zone, that realm, that energy, where we can experience that pleasure always. Ramante yogino anante satyananda chidatmani iti rama padena sau parabrahma abhidhiyate. The supreme absolute truth is known as Ram. Why? He's not whimsically named Ram. It's not that they went around the sages and gave them a chit and asked them, okay, tell me what you think should be the name. And then they did a lotto and then they took out one chit and, oh, this is a good name. Let us all agree on that. No. The names of the Supreme Lord are given on the basis of the qualities of the personality of Godhead. Each name is based on his qualities. And the scriptures say, Ramante yogino anante satyananda chidatmani. That because the yogis, all categories of yogis, and especially the bhakti yogis, but all categories of yogis, when they connect to the supreme absolute truth, they experience such an intoxicating, deep, satisfying, blissful pleasure. Satyananda Chidatmani, in that supreme absolute truth, which is full of knowledge and bliss and eternity. Satyananda Chidatmani. Iti Rama Padenaso Parabrahma. That's why the supreme absolute truth is known as Ram, because the word Rama means the reservoir of all pleasure. So we can tap into this reservoir by going inside. We don't have to go outside. We tap inside through our heart. The doorway to the spiritual world is through our heart. In that way, we can connect and we can remain connected forever. Yes. Yeah. So that is our goal. I'm just mentioning this so that we understand what is it that we are working towards. So sometimes in our current state of consciousness, because we are not very evolved, maybe we feel that kind of a consciousness maybe for only a few minutes in the Bhagavatam class. And the rest of the week we are feeling down and, maybe some feel, maybe some are, in a much better state of consciousness, and that is very good. But the point is, if we stick to the process and we continue, we will see that we are able to remain high more and more and more. And eventually, we can remain high forever in such a state that we will not be affected by any of the waves of the ocean of material existence. Okay, so we are on chapter 10 of the second canto. We discussed up to verse 7 the last week. And the initial part of this conversation, again, this is the conversation where Brahmaji is explaining to Narad Muni. And this conversation is being narrated by Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. And that conversation is being narrated by Suta Goswami to Shaunak and the other sages. Okay, conversation within the conversation within the conversation, just so that you don't lose track. Okay, we are already 3 levels into the conversation. And as soon as we go into the third canto next week, there'll be one more level of conversation. We'll go one more level inside. Okay. So, Brahmaji has already described the Srimad Bhagavat, and then Suta Goswami actually, Shukadev Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Parikshit the 10 topics which are covered in the Srimad Bhagavat. Yes. So what are the 10 topics? Creation, the primary creation, secondary creation, the planetary systems, the protection of the Lord, the creative impetus, the Manvantaras, the change of the Manus, Ishanukatha, or the science of God, Nirodha, the returning back, Mukti, liberation, and Ashray, the Samambona. And this essentially comprises spiritual knowledge in full. So after describing this part, Shukadev Goswami continues on by starting to explain summarily the process of creation. Now actually, what is being described in most of the subsequent verses, most of this we have already discussed in different parts across the last few chapters. So this will be hopefully more or less like a revision for most of you. So I will try to cover it briefly. There are some technicalities here mentioned in terms of creation. I'll not go too much into depth, but I'll try to mention the few key points which are explained in this particular conversation. So the key point which Shukadev Goswami is trying to establish is that ultimately the supreme absolute truth, who is ultimately Shri Krishna, because he is the ultimate aspect of the supreme absolute truth. He is the supreme fountainhead. Sarva Karana Karanam. This whole material manifestation is coming from him and is depending on him. It comes from him, it is maintained by him, it dissolves back in him. The cycle continues. He is not only the source, but he's also the maintainer and he's also the destroyer. Of course, he takes various guna avatars in the form of Brahmaji, Shivji, and Lord Vishnu for the purpose of these three activities. But ultimately, everything is resting on him. And in fact, the whole material creation is also in one way reflecting his spiritual existence. This point is actually explained in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita as well. In the 15th chapter, the example of the inverted tree. The material world is considered like a reflection of the spiritual world. So when the Lord actually creates the material existence, and the Lord being fully spiritual, fully conscious, the Lord is a person with desires, of course not material desires, spiritual desires. And he has spiritual senses. So when he manifests this material creation, the material creation is modeled around spiritual existence. So there are some concepts explained here. One of the things that Shukadev Goswami explains is that just like there are senses in the spiritual world, the bodies in the spiritual world are spiritual. They're not made of earth, water, air, and fire. And there are spiritual senses. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth. Because the Lord wants to experience everything. Because the Lord is conscious. He has spiritual senses. And the Lord, when material creation is made, he wants to manifest similar senses in the living entities within the material world. Yeah. Remember that the material world is essentially composed of two things. There is the matter, the prakriti, and second is the jiva. Both come from the Lord. The jiva are spiritual part and parcels. The jiva means we all, the individual souls, according to our karma, are put into the material world, and we take on different bodies based on our karma and desires. But then we are placed within the womb of material energy by the Lord, and we are given these suits. Remember, Krishna already explained in the Gita also that just like Vasamsi Jirnani Yatha Vihai, the bodies are just like clothes, suits. Just like an astronaut puts a space suit or a diver puts a diving suit. The soul in a foreign environment, soul is supposed to be in the spiritual world, but the material world is a foreign environment. So he is given this suit of the material body. And to be able to function with the senses, the living entity, by the arrangement of the Lord, he is given a material body and he is given a material senses. And for the senses to function, what the Lord does is, there are three aspects to creation which are explained here. There is the Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik and Adhyatmik, which the Lord creates these three categories so that the living entity can function with the material senses. And what are these three? The Adhyatmik person is actually the living entity, the soul. Then the Adi Daivik entity for each of the senses is the Devata who is in charge of the senses, who makes the sense work. So to clarify, each and every sense, whether it is sight, nose, taste, hearing, the power of that sense is controlled by one of the vibhutis of the Lord in the form of a Devata. And we'll go through the examples of who are the various Devatas who control these various senses. We'll come to that. But just understand that this power within the world is controlled by the Devatas. And then obviously there is the device of the sense. For example, the device of the nose, there is a nose. There is the eye, the eyeballs, the retina, the receptors, and whatever else is there which makes the sense. And that aspect, the physical aspect of the eyeball, for example, is called the Adi Bhautik manifestation. So the Bhagavad says that for the living entity to function and for the senses to function, all these three aspects are important and they are interdependent. Only when all three aspects come into place, then only it will work. Which means you are there, the soul is there, you have a body, you have the physical eyes. But the Devata in charge of the sense withdraws the power from the sense, then the senses will not work. So the deity is also important. The deity is there, the soul is there, but the eyeball is removed. It cannot work. The deity is there, the eyeball is there, but the soul leaves the body. It cannot work. So all these three are obviously interdependent. And the Bhagavatam emphasizes that all these three actually are ultimately coming from the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the source and he is the ultimate shelter. So this is what he mentions in the 8th and the 9th verses, where he describes the Adi Daivik, Adhyatmik, and Adi Bhautik aspects and confirms that the Lord is the ultimate shelter. Then the process of creation is described. It is said that Lord Mahavishnu lies in the causal ocean, Karana Dakshayi ocean. He's the first Purusha avatar. And he, lying in the Karana ocean in almost like a mystic slumber, he wishes, let there be creation. We have discussed this many times. Universes emanate from the pores of his body. Just get created forth. As he exhales, the universes come out, and as he inhales, the universes come back in. So as he exhales and the universes come out, on each of those, within each of those universe, a universe is called as Brahmanda. Brahmanda means Brahma, Anda. Anda means egg, and Brahma means Lord Brahma. It's called the egg of Brahma. Why called the egg of Brahma? Because there is one Brahma who's created in each and every universe by the Lord. How does this work? That after each of the universes manifested, Mahavishnu or Karanadaksha Vishnu expands himself and enters into each of the Brahma under the Brahmanda in the form of a Purusha avatar, another expansion known as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And from the pores of his body, his spiritual body, a special type of water comes. It is actually a kind of sweat. Of course, the Lord's sweat and our sweat are different. When we become sweaty, nobody wants to come near us. The Lord's sweat is not like that. It's a transcendental sweat. So don't immediately imagine, oh, it's going to be very smelly within the Brahmanda. No, not quite like that. The Lord has a spiritual body. And when we sweat, we can probably sweat maximum how much? Maybe half a cup. But when the Lord in the form of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu sweats, he fills up half the universe with the Garbha Udaka. And then he lies on it, on Ananta Shesha, in the Garbha Udaka. That is why he is known as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And because this Lord is not just some impersonal entity, he's a person. Both the Mahavishnu as well as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. That manifestation of God is a person. He's a Nara. He's a person. And what does this Garbhodakashayi Vishnu do? He lies down. Right? Just like when we go to a resort. Yeah, what do we like to do in a resort? The ultimate idea of relaxation in a resort. What is the ultimate idea of relaxation? Not just going and sleeping in your room. That we can do at home also. But what we like to do, we like to go to the pool or in the sea. And we like to put a float in the sea or the pool. And on that we want to lie down on the water. Look into the sky and relax. So nice. Floating on the water. So this original resort activity was performed by Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and he's still performing it. He's lying down on this huge swimming pool, which is half the universe. And he's lying down. And his float is Ananta Shesha. And he's lying down and half asleep. And like when they are floating on the float, what do they like? They like different people from the hotel to come and serve them in different ways. Bring them a pina colada drink. Bring some cut fruits. And then they want to lie down on the water and enjoy that. So as the Lord is lying down there, Lakshmi Devi is there. Lakshmi Devi is sitting at his feet, making sure all arrangements are made. Whatever the Lord wants, she's massaging his feet. Correct? What can be better? Getting massage, lying on a swimming pool with all food and best beverages being served. So, why I'm giving all these examples, we'll see that ultimately the desires that the living entities have, they're also all coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are not totally divorced from Him. We are His parts and parcels. The problem is, we are foolishly trying to imitate Him without understanding our real nature. That is the problem. But anyway, coming back to the point, the Nara, the person who is doing ayana, ayan means lying down, on the water of the Garbhodaka ocean. That Lord who is chilling out on the water of the Garbhodaka ocean, is that Nara who's doing ayana is Narayana. That is why the Supreme Lord is also known as Narayan, because he lies down in that water. That is what the Bhagavatam mentions. Okay. So please remember this. Why the Lord is known as Narayana? Because one, he's a person who's lying down on the water of the Garbhodaka ocean. Nara plus Ayana is Narayana. This is mentioned in the 11th verse of the 10th chapter of the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this Lord is making sure that all the ingredients which are necessary are being provided. Remember, the primary creation is doing by Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and only the secondary creation is where Lord Brahma comes into the picture. Remember, after primary creation, Brahmaji is created, he performs tapasya, then the Lord reveals him darshan, the Lord shakes hand and says, welcome to the job, you have been appointed. Okay, all knowledge has been given, you have been trained. Correct? Now start doing your seva. And that is how Brahmaji gets started. So this Hiranyagarbha, this golden hue, this whole material energy is activated by the Lord, and the living entities, the jivas, are impregnated into this material energy by the Lord. If you remember, we discussed this briefly last time. The living entities, because material creation gets created again and again and again. Actually, it is explained in the subsequent verses that there are 3 levels of creation. One, there is a Mahakalpa, then there is a Vikalpa, and there is a Kalpa. Mahakalpa means when the whole material manifestation is created, which means the whole life of Brahma, where the initial ingredients are created. And then the Vikalpa, where Brahma gets created. And then there is the Kalpa. Kalpa means the creation which happens in every day of Brahma. Where Brahma creates, and then there is destruction. Then he again creates, and there is destruction. So this process is continuously going on. All this is described in detail in the purport, so I'm not going to go through all the points. So, if you need more details, you can go into the purports and read that. So all these activities are happening simply by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All the ingredients are given by the Lord. The senses are activated by the Lord. We discussed this, how the deities are empowered to control the various senses. So similarly, it is said that without that without that activation by the Lord, material nature will not function. Sometimes people think, oh, everything is going on through the arrangement of matter. Yes, matter is there. There is energy. Because matter and energy are, essentially 2 states of the same nature. But material energy by itself cannot do what we see is happening. There must be an impetus. There must be a creative impetus. There must be an intelligence behind who's directing. And that is the role that is done by the Lord. The Lord activates the energy, empowers it, animates it, then puts the living entities into it. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Tasam Brahma Mahadyonir Aham Bija Pradapita, that I am the father of all these living entities. Because of my seeding these living entities into the womb of Maya, the creation of the material bodies has become possible. A very nice example is given in the scripture. Sometimes it is seen that it appears that scorpions are born from the rice. It is said that scorpions are born in the rice, because if you have a sack of rice, then you will see the scorpions are born there. Then people may think, oh, this means that scorpions are produced by rice. But is that the truth? Are scorpions produced by rice? No. What happens is that the eggs are laid by the scorpion, are within the rice, and in due course, the eggs hatch and the scorpions come out. So it appears that the scorpions are there in the rice, are coming out from the rice. But nobody is able to see the eggs because they're so small and so much similar in color like the rice that the eggs are not visible. So it appears that the rice is giving birth to the scorpions. So similarly, the Lord is the seed-giving Father. He is making that possible by impregnating within material nature with his energy, he's impregnating with the various living entities, and they develop different kinds of bodies. So materialistic people sometimes think everything is going on by simply the combination of matter, but no, matter needs activation, matter needs guidance. And the Supreme Lord, although invisible, is behind as the active potency for all functions within the material world. In fact, he says in this chapter that if he withdraws, everything will collapse. The Gita also says everything is resting on me like pearls strung on a thread. All the various sensations, everything in this world is created by him based on what is within his nature. The Virata Purusha, the Lord, when he creates the material existence, he assumes the form of this universe as the Virata Purusha. And then he starts generating. He's the Virata Purusha, but then the individual Purushas, the living entities, they also have to be given senses. Just like the Lord has senses, they also need to be given senses. So he starts creating various senses by creating the organs, by creating the devatas. So there are a lot of descriptions given here, quite a few verses which cover that. Which says, for example, different senses: the mouth, the sense organ of speech. For example, the power of speech, the controlling deity is the fire. The controlling deity of air, Vayu, is controlling the sense of smell. Vision is possible by the grace of Surya Dev. And that is why it is said that if one has some problems with the eye, one should worship Surya. He controls. Of course, if we worship Krishna, because Krishna is the source of all the devatas, automatically everybody gets worship. But some people, they specifically want to worship Surya Dev, even though it is not specifically needed. But Surya Dev controls on the behalf of the Lord the sense of sight. And so many other senses. All of this is described. Whether it's the sense of touch, it's the sense of taste. Taste is related to the water element and it comes from Varuna. And then there are the hands, the legs, each of these senses, whether it's the Jnanendriyas or the Karmendriyas, various kinds of devatas. Even the function of evacuation is controlled by the devata called Mitra. The progenitor, the progeny producing function of reproduction, the controlling deity is Prajapati. Even for the function within the material world, which is related to death and the soul moving from one body to another, because that happens through the agency of prana. And the prana is somehow linked intimately with the navel. There is a deity in charge of that as well. So different kinds of deities are controlling the different functions. For example, the mind is influenced and controlled by the moon, deity Soma, and from there, determination and all desire becomes manifested. So all these technicalities are explained over the next quite a few verses. But one should understand one thing. I'm not going into too much of the technicalities, but one thing is important, that while the Lord is present in this material manifestation, one in the form of the Virata Rupa. What is the Virata Rupa? We have discussed this many times. Virata Rupa is where the Lord assumes the form of the material manifestation. It's an imaginary form, assumes in the sense the whole material manifestation is imagined to be the body of the Lord. Because actually, factually, the Lord is present. Because if he is not present in the form of Virata Rupa actively, the whole universe will not be able to function. And the second aspect that the Lord is present in this material world, this material manifestation, is through his aspect, impersonal aspect of Brahman, by which he is permeating all existence. Yes. In fact, the whole material creation is said to be emanating from the substratum of Brahman, from the spiritual platform. But the Bhagavatam says, please understand that while generally living entities are fascinated by these two aspects of God, they are fascinated that this whole universe is the body of the Lord. They are fascinated that the Lord has an impersonal existence beyond the material creation. They are fascinated by this. They are fascinated by the way the material world works. But the Bhagavad says in this 10th chapter that these topics are more of attraction for those who are still attached to matter. Those souls who are still attached to matter. Because these aspects of the Lord are still in connection with the material world. In fact, those living entities who are too attached to the material world, for them, the scriptures recommend better you talk about Virata Purusha, because you're so attached, you cannot conceive and understand higher things. You'll be more excited by this process of creation. So you stick to this, discuss about this. And because it is in relation to the Lord, you'll still get purified and you'll come to a higher state of consciousness. But those who are pure devotees of the Lord, they understand that beyond the Virata Rupa, beyond even the impersonal Brahman aspect, which is the basis from where even the material existence comes about, beyond that there is another existence. Rastasmatu bhavo anyo vyakta vyaktat sanatana yacha sarveshu bhaveshu suna vinashyati. In the Gita, Krishna says, beyond this manifest and unmanifest, there is another nature, my spiritual nature, which is the Vaikuntha, and my spiritual form, which is beyond this manifest and unmanifest, beyond the Vishwarupa, beyond the Brahman, where I'm eternally existing in a spiritual form, in my Satchidananda Rupa, where my spiritual name, quality, pastimes, associates, and unlimited spiritual variety is present without any defect, without any influence of material time, without any inebrities and miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. That is the subject matter that the pure devotees talk about. They are interested in that. And that is what we should all work towards. Because that is the highest state, and that is the state which the living entities have come from. They have that potential to be in that state and go back to the spiritual world where they can have a life of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. So that is what Shukadeva Goswami describes to Parikshit Maharaj. And he says, all these living entities in this material world, because they have a desire to enjoy this material world, the Lord has simply created this material world simply to facilitate their material desires. And that is why these three gunas, the Rajogun, Sattvagun, Tamagun, has been manifested. But that is not the real nature of the soul. All these living entities, whether it's from Brahma all the way to the smallest living entities, whether it is the sages, the devatas like Indra, Varun, Chandra, whether it is great sages like Bhrigu, or inhabitants of Pitruloko and Siddhaloko, whether it's the Charanas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Asuras, Yaksha, Kinnara, Apsaras, Nag, Kimpurushas, the Pishach, the ghosts, the goblins, animals, birds, insects, all this whole range of species, 84 lakh species. Some species are created from seeds, some are created from eggs, some are created from embryos, some are created from perspiration, Whether they are in the land, water, sky, all these various forms are created by the Lord as different bodies which are suited for different desires and qualifications of the living entities. And the Lord awards them based on the past desire. But that is not the true nature of the soul. The true nature of the soul is not to be in this material world. So in this material world, he is wearing this artificial suit, an incompatible suit. The soul will become truly happy when he is in the spiritual environment, because he'll be in a compatible environment. But because of illusion, forgetting his real identity, the living entity continues to try to enjoy this material world. But the Lord is so kind, even though the living entity is illusioned, even though the living entity is bewildered, the Lord doesn't give up on him. The Lord is so kind that the Lord, even though in his original form is unmanifested and not visible within creation directly, he appears within his own creation by taking various incarnations. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata abhyutthanam dharmasya tadatmanam srjamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come again and again, yuge yuge, the Lord says. Why? To protect religion, to protect the devotees, to re-establish religion, to destroy the demoniac, and most important of all, to encourage the living entities, to attract the living entities to come back to him. Because the Lord has come into this world in so many incarnations, that is why we have the Bhagavad, isn't it? Where we have the pastimes of Narasimha, Ram, Krishna, Vamana, and all these other Kurma, Matsya, these beautiful incarnations. If they had not appeared, would we have any subject matter to discuss? Not much. So the Lord is kind and he appears to reclaim all conditioned souls. Of course, he's not just manifest as Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, because that is more of a managing the material universe, but beyond that, various Leela avatars are coming to attract us. So the Lord is always involved actively, sometimes from behind the scenes, sometimes he comes in to the scene prominently for some time. Ultimately, he is the active principle from whom everything happens. And across the process of this kalpa, it is said this present kalpa, it is said there are 30 kalpas, the 30 names are given in the scriptures. Each kalpa is one day of Brahma, and there are 30 names, each kalpa is a particular name. The current kalpa or the current day of Brahma is known as the Shveta Varaha Kalpa. Why it is called the Shveta Varaha Kalpa? This day of Brahma, the current day that we are in. We are in the 8th Manvantara, in the 28th Chaturyuga of the current day of Brahma. And this day of Brahma is the first day of the month of Brahma. And Brahma is currently in his 51st year. Just completed 50. We just missed the party. We were a few trillion years. Anyway, so he's in his 51st year, just started, and his first day, and in that first day, first month, first day is known as the Shveta Varaha Kalpa. Why Shveta Varaha? Because in this day of Brahma, in this Kalpa, the Lord appears in the form of a white Varaha. There are two Varahas which are described in the Bhagavad. There is a Shveta Varaha and there is a Rakta Varaha. There's a reddish complexioned Varaha incarnation, and there is also a white complexion Varaha incarnation. So the Varaha which appeared in our Kalpa is known as Shweta Varaha. This particular Kalpa is also known in scriptures as the Padma Kalpa, and that is why in this particular chapter, Shukadeva Goswami refers to the current Kalpa as Padma Kalpa, but the Acharya has explained that Padma Kalpa and the Shvetavaraha Kalpa are exactly the same. There is no difference. So this is just for your information. If you're not familiar with the Kalpa and the calculations, we have discussed this in earlier chapters. You can look that up and read in the Bhagavad. The details are there. The Kalpa is 1 day of Brahma, which is roughly his daytime is 4.32 billion years and the night time is 4.32 billion years. So roughly 8.64 billion earth years is 1 day of Brahma. That day has 14 Manvantaras and each Manvantara is roughly 71 Divya Yuga cycles. Each Divya Yuga has Treta, Satya, Treta, Dwapara and Kali, 4 Chaturyugas. So, Shukadev Goswami tells Maharaj Parikshit, I have explained this process of creation to you, how through the Purusha avatars the creation happens, and how the Lord is ultimately in control and managing everything. And I have also mentioned to you that beyond the Virat Roop, beyond the Brahman aspect, ultimately it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His spiritual abode, which is the subject matter of attraction for those who want to attain the highest level of spiritual consciousness. Yeah, but unfortunately, the living entities, based on their karma and desires, are trapped within this material world, and they go through different bodies. And this whole cycle of creation is repeated in these kalpas. And he says, this kalpa, the detailed calculation with respect to kalpa and time and all that, I will soon explain to you. Because explain the subsequent cantos in more detail, and we'll come to that when we go there. This is for now, just understand this is the Padma Kalpa or the Shvetavaraha Kalpa which is going on. And I will explain the measurements of time and the symptoms of the different yugas in detail. But for now, I will explain to you some pastimes about the current Padma Kalpa. As soon as he says this, Shaunaka Rishi starts asking Suta Goswami. Remember, why Shaunak Muni is asking Suta Goswami? Because Suta Goswami is narrating the conversation between Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. He says, yes, thank you. You have described all these things with respect to creation. It was good and nice. But the sages know that ultimately this subject matter is more for people who are attached to matter. Of course, when we speak like that, most of us think, okay, that means this topic is not for me. So no, it is not like that. We are still within the category of those who are attached to matter. Okay, so we should not neglect the discussion on these topics. We are not there that we are already qualified to just focus on the transcendental Leela of the Lord. That we will get the adhikar gradually as we get purified. Until then, for us, both of these Leelas, the Srishti Leela as well as the Divya spiritual Leela of the Lord, both are important. So Shaunaka Rishi, he says and requests Suta Goswami, can we now move to another topic? Because he's actually very eager to hear about the Lord's pastimes, spiritual pastimes, because that is where the rasa is there, the spiritual rasa is there. That is where the nectar within the lotus is there. All this other knowledge will help us to come near the lotus, come into the lotus, but ultimately the nectar that we want to taste is within the spiritual Leela of the Lord. So he says, I have one request to you. Can we now discuss the story of Vidura? Because you had told us, Suta Goswami, previously that Vidura had left home after he was insulted by Duryodhan. He left all his relatives and just walked off. And I've heard that when he left home and went into the forest for pilgrimage and went to various places, he met this great sage called Maitreya. And between Vidura and Maitreya, there was apparently a very, very deep philosophical discussion on very, very deep topics about spiritual life. Can you please tell us about that? What they spoke? That will be very interesting topic because a lot of deep spiritual truths were discussed there. Can we move to that topic now? And also tell us, even though Vidur left home and went, why did he come back again? Back to the palace of Hastinapur, even though he had given up. What was the reason he came back? So also tell me, what all did Vidura do as he was traveling through various places of pilgrimage? So Sud Goswami, of course, knew why the sages are so excited about this topic and said, yes, I will explain to you all these things. And that is exactly the conversation which happened between Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. So let me explain the answers to you of these questions by explaining to you the conversation which happened between Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. Please listen to that conversation attentively. Now we will move, now that creation topic has been covered, now we will move into this very interesting conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, where there are a lot of spiritual lessons. And within that conversation, there are so many leelas of the Lord which are also discussed. So that brings us to the end of the 10th chapter of the second canto, and it also brings us to the end of the 10th of the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavad. So again, congratulations to all of you. We have completed the summary study of the first two cantos. So if you want to taste the nectar, you have to go in. This is only the fragrance from outside. Yeah? So please study the Bhagavad in detail. Read translation, purport, discuss, ask questions, and then you can go deeper. So the third canto actually is a very vast canto. Just to give you an example, the second canto had 10 chapters. Yes. The second canto had 10 chapters. The third canto has 33 chapters. Okay. So that means if we cover every week one chapter, we need 33 weeks to go through only the third canto. Okay. So it's a lot, but a lot of very, very beautiful pastimes. Then the fourth canto, 31 chapters. Another 31. And that is already 31 plus 34, 65. That is, 1 year, 3 months. Then we only complete four cantos, which means only 1/3 of the Bhagavad. But nonetheless, the third chapter and the third canto and the fourth canto are actually very sweet, very, very beautiful pastimes, and very important leelas are there. Dhruv Maharaj's pastime is there. Then Prithu Maharaj's pastimes are there. Kardama Muni, Kapila Dev, Prachine Barhat, the Prachetas, a lot of beautiful pastimes are there. Also, Varaha's incarnation is there, and Hiranyaksha's being killed is there. So all these various conversations are there, right from the point of the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, and then going forward. So it's very interesting, and a lot of pastimes are soon starting the third canto. So remain tuned in. So I am stopping at this point. Any questions, any comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Santanam Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
So in the spiritual world also, each soul is having have its own senses.
Yes.
So the same soul is here also in the material world with the same senses. But what is the difference, Prabhu?
No, the senses, the spiritual senses are not fully manifested within the material world. The spiritual body is only in a seed form here. So the material body has material senses which are uh, controlled by the material by the various devatas, and those have to be interfaced with the soul for the soul to be able to interact with the material world. So that is why this chapter describes that while the living entity is there to function within the material world with senses, he needs the material sense and also the devata who's in charge of that sense to be able to activate that sense, so that interface is working between the soul and the material senses. So that is made possible by that arrangement. How exactly that works, of course, technically we may not be able to understand subtly how exactly that works, but that is what is mentioned as something which requires that special enabling of the Lord to allow matter to interact, to interface with the soul. So also ultimately we have to understand that all the senses that even the living entity has are ultimately part and parcel of the Lord's senses. And that is why the Lord is known as Rishikesha. The Lord is the master of all the senses. So the sense that the Lord has, for example, the sense of sight, all the living entities are bestowed by a small infinitesimal part of that potency of having that sense, because the Lord has this desire to interact with his part and parcels as well as the whole environment. The Lord manifests these different senses for himself in his own spiritual body, and then he, from his spiritual senses, he makes it possible for the living entities to have senses, and that is how the whole interaction is possible. So the Lord is ultimately the reservoir of the senses. That is why he is Rishikesha. That is why the scripture says that because all our senses are coming from the Lord, they are his gift. It is the duty of the living entity to serve the master of the senses. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Yeah, that is the definition of bhakti. Engaging our senses in the service of the Lord of the senses is known as bhakti. The living entity, when he is in illusion, he thinks that all these senses that I have are actually for my enjoyment. Now I have matter and I have my senses. I will freak out and run about and enjoy as much as I can. But the living entity forgets that both matter is coming from somebody else and the senses are also coming from somebody else. Yes. It's like we go into somebody else's garden, take his tools, use his trees, pluck the fruits and start enjoying whimsically. And then we become thief. So the proper way is to understand first that everything belongs to the Lord and should be used in his service. Of course, the Lord wants all of us to partake in his opulence. It is not that the Lord says, oh, only I will eat the mangoes, I'll not give you any. No. But we have to understand our connection and work within that framework of cooperation. We cannot be rebellious. We cannot be selfish. So all that the Lord is expecting is understanding and acknowledging it. Of course, the Lord wants to share all his opulences with all of us because we are his children. It is not that he is greedy and doesn't want. No, but he wants for our own good that we understand the actual nature of reality and we actually understand in what situation, in what way we can actually be happy. Yes, we can eat the mango, but we must understand first and acknowledge that it is his garden, his mango. So we take his permission, offer it to him, and then we can eat. That is okay. But if we think this mango is mine, it's for my enjoyment, then we become a thief. So that is why bhakti is Rishikena Rishikesha Sevana. Okay. Does that help you to understand better?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, good. Any other question? Okay, if nothing else, then we will end the class for today. So thank you all very much. I don't see any new devotee join today. So thank you all for those who are coming regularly. So yeah, so I will see you then next on Wednesday, where we'll continue with the discussion on the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We are entering a very interesting section there. So that will be good. And I hope all of you are also reading and studying the Gita and the Bhagavad also in parallel. Okay, so thank you all very much. Mantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.